I don't treat all religions equally. I mean, they're religions I literally never think about because I'm not seeing the daily casualties of those belief systems. So,
but you say that as people get away from fundamental versions of these things, and I'm not advocating for fundamentalism here, but you say yourself, as people get away from the fundamental versions of these things tend to go haywire. And so, in essence, what you're saying is that as
people tend to go haywire in what sense?
Oh, I thought I was interpreting
multiplicity of interpretations.
Right.
Well, yeah, but so people are in
That's
people
the
are in
moral
search of better
relativism
heuristics. I think the pressure is some of these heuristics are obviously so bad that there's civilizational pressure to find better interpretations and
But you said that the fundamentalists have an advantage.
Yeah.
What is that advantage?
Because if you just go back to the text and say, listen, I want to understand what these words mean, right? You get at the first pass the quote literal interpretation, right? And you're not bringing any armamentarium you've got from the outside, from other parts of culture, to parse the text. You're just trying to, if it's in English and you speak English, you're just trying to decode the words, right? And when it says, if the girl's not a virgin on her wedding night, take her to her father's doorstep and stone her to death. That you know what stone means, you know what girl means, you know what father means, and you're 90% there to an obvious atrocity. Right?
I get the horror of it, and we'll get to that in a second here.
Yeah.
But the basic point is to say that the fundamentalists have an advantage is to acknowledge something functional about those stories, which I'm claiming are going to be some kind of evolutionary heuristic for living a life. Doesn't make them defensible.
They have an advantage. It's not an advantage that. It's an advantage. It's a mimetic advantage. It's an advantage. It's why someone like Anwar al-Awlaki could make YouTube videos that so many people found compelling. It's because it's totally straightforward. It's like the advantage is, listen, there's a lot of people spending a lot of time lying to you about what these books mean and what the prophet and how he lived, right? You know in your heart that my interpretation of this is correct. You just read the words, right? And there's a strength in that. There's an honesty in that. It's clear when it says sacrifice a goat. Goat means goat. You're not doing that because you want to live even more by God's word. No, you found some of God's words unacceptable.
Okay, good. So I think we've got a tenuous kind of agreement that there might be some kind of utility, that utility might be morally questionable sometimes, but that there is some reason that people would resort to a fundamental, simple interpretation because as they depart from that interpretation, things get more difficult and it creates some kind of disadvantage.
Well, part of the problem with that would be that as you move away from the text, you fractionate the moral belief system and you end up with a nihilistic situation. So as you move away from dogmatism, you move towards the parallel danger, which is moral relativism and nihilism. But let me ask you...
No, I want to ask you a question.
Oh, yes, okay. Yeah. So, and also, what time do we actually stop this part? Because it's 10.
I just missed the time card. But I think we have another couple of minutes. Okay. So...
There's no objective reality to time, I think.
Actually, it's a pretty good conversation we could have. But
okay.
So here's my question for you, is if we agree that there is some way in which religious texts carry some kind of value because they allow people to figure out how to navigate their lives in ways that might reduce suffering, reduce the complexity of the choices that they have to make.
Yes.
So here's the problem. Isn't it then also true that those stories are responsive to past environments? And so the claim that these things might be timeless would be suspect. And
yes.
In fact, you would expect a spectrum of durabilities. Okay.
All that's true.
All that's true.
So far, so good.
Well, so far, so good. This is actually, I think, quite excellent then, because what we have is a recognition that there is something to these belief systems that has to do with practical realities in the past, and we also have an acknowledgement that we cannot trust in these things based on simple faith, because even if they can be certain to have worked at some point in the past, we don't know what their relevance is to the present.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
All right.
Okay. So I. That's